The subject of my talk today is the philosophical notion of the confrontation between self and other. I should warn you, this is very much ongoing research, so I may not come to some grand conclusion today, but I'm hoping to make some progress. And the reason to devote any time to speaking about this is I've been working on this for a few years, and at least so far, no matter what angle I come at this encounter from, it seems to sustain this irreducible tension. On the one hand, there's this notion that I take from Emmanuel Levinas, the idea of the ontology of the other, ontology being the study of being. The idea is that I come into contact with another person, I see you over there, and that implies that there is something that is over here, that something is me. This encounter produces me. Not only that, but the fact of your being over there somewhere, it suggests the possibility of a movement, a movement toward you, from me to you. That movement is freedom. In this way, the encounter is expansive. It opens out new possibilities. It produces possibilities of transcendence and freedom. On the other hand, though, certain scholars, and I'm thinking particularly of Simone de Beauvoir and Frantz Fanon, see the encounter rather as a sealing and closing kind of violence. In the oppressive gaze of the other, Fanon says that he is identified as something specific. He is identified as a black man, and that seals in his identity, foreclosing the possibility of alteration. Beauvoir talks about the confrontation between male and female as producing the male as free, subjugating the female's freedom and denying that possibility of a surpassing movement. I also want to bring in here the work of Michel Foucault, who suggests that power relations reach us through social structures. My intervention here is to suggest that in the encounter with the other person, power relations close and delimit the possibilities, those opening out possibilities of the encounter, rather sealing and closing. I'm not putting these thinkers in conversation with one another in order to sort them out or to pick a side. Rather, I think that there is something productive to be said for bringing them together, because I'm seeking a becoming, in the ontological sense, a becoming in violence, and a doing with power and harm and trauma, which I'll take from the psychoanalytic perspective. So the question there becomes, what are the possibilities of the encounter with the other, and what do we want them to be? Simply put, when I reach out to another person, what is it that I'm looking for? Often, I think, what I'm looking for is control. From Fanon and Beauvoir, again, this second perspective on the encounter is that I reach out to another person looking to get a handle on them and thereby on myself. I'm looking to foreclose and to close in and to deny freedom. Beauvoir has a great book called Ethics of Ambiguity, in which she suggests that freedom is a burden. She calls it an excruciation. It's something that we carry around as this impossibility. It's hard to hold, to move around in the world thinking, I know what I am, and I know what you are, and I know where we live in this world together, but also, I could be different, you could be different, everything could be different. It's overwhelming, it's agonizing. And so instead, in the encounter with the other person, it's a really efficient way to say, hey, you over there, take my freedom from me, I don't want it. It's this heavy burden, I don't know what to do with it, because that is freedom, it's movement into the unknown. It's so uncomfortable that we're casting around in the world looking to discard it. And so we reach out to the other person looking to close and to seal. This often takes the shape of something like objectification or mystification, which are two sides of the same coin. I'm looking to the other person only as an object to my own consciousness. You are just the thing that is over there for me, and not a self for yourself. There's nothing unknown or unknowable about you. Rather, I think I know everything about you because I can identify you in one of those little boxes that we walk around in the world thinking that we have in order to place other people. I can see you as male, female, black, white, and on the flip side, I reach out to you looking for you to subjugate my freedom in that way, so that you can identify me and bind me and seal in my identity and foreclose my possibilities of transcendence and of freedom. This produces a stagnant conception of the self as something specific, an ideal or idol that does not move. It can't change. It's fascistic and it's iterative and it's reiterative. It does and redoes things that we already know about ourselves, about other people, and about the world. These are the ways in which power and social structures continue to reproduce themselves. They work so effectively because they're comfortable. They tell us things we already know. They tell us what we are, and they foreclose the possibility of any alteration. So I should pause here to justify my next turn, which is to talk particularly about the erotic confrontation and about sex. Why talk about sex at all? Well, Frantz Fanon wants to discuss a libidinal economy of race, something like a sexual or quasi-sexual investment in race, in racism, the production of the racialized body as a libidinal object, which is just to say that we have a sexual drive undergirding our investment in structures like racism. This in conversation with Foucault's notion that sexuality is the primary mode of subjection, the ways in which power reaches us. Sexuality is the primary mode by which that happens. Putting those two things together, we reach a point where, for some reason, sex is working really effectively to delimit and bind and draw those lines around our identity. On the flip side, though, sex sustains an inherent transgression. Under this framework, where our identities are bound and maintained by something like ego from the psychoanalytic perspective, we are so invested in the maintenance of the identity as closed and as stable. But sex or intimate contact with another person, not to put too fine a point on it, but the possibility of penetration of those boundaries by another person is immediately threatening and destabilizing. And so I think it's no accident that it is particularly in sexual contexts that we take up particularly socially sensitive topics. We talk about things like race play, CNC, degradation that takes sensitive forms like misogyny, transphobia. We take up social epidemics and personal harm in the context of sex. My suggestion here is that we do this because sex has already thrust us outward, away from our bounded self-conception. It already puts us in a position where it's not me over here and you over there. There's no boundary, there's no separation. At least there's already the threat of a dissolution, a surpassing, a movement out of ourselves toward perhaps a third or new place where something unexpected might emerge. I like to envision this as almost an uncrusting, a chipping away at those social structures that are always coming down to bear on the encounter with the other person. They're always working in the background, but in this particularly privileged context, we are able to turn our attention toward them, to make them exciting, to make them libidinal, importantly, to make them available, put them in our own hands. This is something that psychoanalyst Avie Sakatopoulou calls self-narrativization. I take this in contrast to the stagnant conception of the self as an ideal or as something small and bounded. Rather, this is the self as story, the self as something that I am doing, perhaps the self as something I am creating with you, something that is surpassing and something that is new. You may notice that we've kind of landed on the original contradiction I started with. In this particular encounter with the other person, there is the possibility of sealing, binding, and closing sexual subjection. This is how power relations reach us, and in the encounter with the other person, we do and redo misogyny, the structures that we're familiar with. We can reaffirm the identities we were already familiar with. Or this transgression of sex that crosses boundaries, it puts us in a position to open. In that ontological sense, it produces freedom. We are able to move past. We're able to move toward novelty, toward alteration, something called sexual shattering, which denies the idea that I am over here and you are over there. Rather, we've crossed over into something entirely new. This is, of course, particularly politically critical and salient from the psychoanalyst Avie Sakatopoulou. She says of the ego's investment in fascism and in social stability, that the ego's job is to maintain homeostatic equilibrium and to ensure the organism's stability. Denial, silence, even staying in harmful situations, all these are preferable to the ego than the disequilibration that is necessary for action. We're invested in stagnation. There's a great book called Hatred of Sex that suggests that we live in a particularly sex-phobic culture because of individualism, because of our prioritization of boundaries and of ego. Sex is so threatening to not only our personal identities, but also our social structures, because it sustains the possibility of novelty, and that novelty is opaque. We don't know what might emerge when we choose to meet the other outside of the terms of the ego, and that's threatening. And so we seek to control it. So while we may have landed on this original contradiction, I think we've made some progress toward easing the tension. Because sex sustains these possibilities of alteration, of massive change, of shattering, we seek to control it, we bind it, and we let it bind us. To Foucault, this investment in boundary is the fascism that lives in all of us. We desire primarily to be mastered by power. We desire to be unfree because freedom is so uncomfortable. But this is disrupted by threats to power relations, threats to appropriate sexuality, those structures that delimit the kinds of sex we're supposed to be having, the way we're supposed to be engaging not only with our bodies, with pleasure, with desire, but also with the other person. So any disruption to those institutions and those structures under which we are so tightly bound when it comes to our contact with the other person, those disruptions sustain not only the possibility of personal alteration, but also of social and sexual revolution. Thank you.